Hello YouTube, long time no see. Sorry for the long break without a video. After 7 weeks of back-to-back uploads, I felt like I needed a week off. I was feeling a bit burnt out, but I'm here now and I'm ready to show off the last mechanic in the game. It's actually one I've never shown before, so it's very exciting. And I bet after that intro, you're wondering what on earth it is. So I think we better get started and take a look. This footage I'm starting with is how this part of the game looked at the beginning of the week. A lot of it I quickly threw together about a year ago. The floor is just a placeholder texture I put together in Photoshop, as is the brick textures, and all of the visual effects that are currently active in the store are active here, and some of them don't really work well. You can see I have this intro sequence. This would play the first time the player begins in this mode. But let's take a step back a little bit and I'll talk briefly about how this actually fits into the game. So in the game, after you complete a wave of enemies, after you beat them, you'll run around the store as long as you'd like, then you'll enter this kind of Tetris-like mode, where the majority of the story is going to be told in the game. I'll talk more about this in a bit, but it's meant to be a literal representation of the main character rebuilding themselves. Now in terms of the work I've done this week, it was mostly visual. With this starting footage here, a lot of the gameplay and the programmed sequences are all the same. You can still move the bricks around, you can spin them on their axis, and you can also rotate the camera a bit. But most of the changes I wanted to do were just visual in nature. Obviously, this brick floral landing wasn't exactly the most moody aesthetic to set. At the start of the game, you'll see this structure fully assembled and whole, like you can see here, but then you'll watch it explode. The idea being, at the beginning of the game, the main character goes through a serious personal trauma at the same time as the world ending due to monsters. And as you play through the game, the character rebuilds themselves as they meet new characters and form friendships, whose bonds will then help them rebuild. So as you make these friendships, you'll be able to see AI assembling this structure with you and placing bricks with you. So I made that structure in Blender out of just those brick models, and then I set this up to try and have it explode over time. And this is what I used in the game to have those bricks starting at the very beginning, kind of floating in midair after the explosion. In terms of the changes I made this week, there was quite a few. I mentioned in one of my earlier videos that I had actually set up a fully physically based rendering system in the game, but I wasn't using it. I was using that more cartoony style lighting. So I thought it might be cool to use it here. I disabled most of the effects and swapped out some materials. For instance, with the bricks, I chose to use this material. I actually made it when I was first starting to dip my toes into Substance Designer. It's from a tutorial from the account Get Learnt with Chuck. I'll link the video in the description. His material though had these broken adjustable tiles. Personally, I don't love them in this situation. I think I'll probably go back and lower the number of them, and I'm probably also going to generate a couple variations just so not every single brick has the same pattern in the same locations. And on the floor, I chose to use a material from textures.com. Honestly, I'm not in love with it, so I'll probably go back and make my own. I might just use something from this Substance Designer project to have a different marble. And I'm still deciding if I want to add some walls or ceilings in this kind of space. I'd like it to be this sterile place of solitude, so I might try and just change the back color from black to a different shade and just leave it as this kind of empty location. I think there's still some adjusting to do with the lighting. I'd like it to be overall darker and then more obvious where the light is hitting, but I'm pretty happy it looks quite sharp with the light hitting the different materials. So in the finished product, this intro where the camera kind of flips around, that'll just play once the first time you enter this state. And then from then on, you'll just kind of resume and your progress will already be there. And this is kind of the start of the actual flow of the game. So you'll kind of have a pre-wave before the enemy combat where you can go through the store and there'll be some dialogue and some things you can do. You'll have the enemy combat, and then you'll have kind of a post-wave, and then the Tetrisy area, the bricks area, and that'll repeat over and over again. I wanted to talk more about this mechanic and why I chose to include it in the game. There's a few reasons, but the first and really the most direct reason was I find in a lot of games, you give players freedom and control over gameplay, and then that all gets taken away during the story. For myself personally, I find it difficult sometimes to sit through a game's dialogue or story, even if I'm interested, just because moments before you're in control and you're running around and you're able to control everything, and now you're in the middle of an unskippable cutscene. So I like the idea, just conceptually, of giving the player gameplay during the story, hopefully enough to keep them engaged, but light enough that they're still absorbed in the story. Another reason why I chose this mechanic comes back to the power of games. I think games have the ability to convey experiences like no other medium. You get to be a part of the experience and participate in what happens. So this seems like a pretty simple mechanic I've implemented, and it is, but I think there's a lot of depth in the experience to it. Like when you first start and you see so many bricks all up in the air, it's very intimidating and feels hopeless. It's even part of the atmosphere I've tried to create here. But if you keep placing one brick at a time, soon you'll be able to see how far you've come, which is a lot like most large challenges in life. Maybe even a bit like making your own game by yourself. And I just love that through play and through this experience, you can feel that in a video game. I also appreciate how powerful this mechanic is in terms of reinforcing the bonds of the characters you become friends with. I wanted this story to cover this idea of starting over and building yourself back up. It's actually why I called the store the Redeemart, to hide the word redemption in the title. And in my mind, your friends and loved ones are an important part of that. And that really gets strengthened by the gameplay, where as you become friends with people, they'll be able to help you. You can see here, there's 2 AIs also placing bricks here. And I still need to update the visuals on this so it's a bit more clear, but I think that's such a cool part of this, where you have this overwhelming task, and now you have help, and now it's moving quicker because you have your friends on your side. Really, just generally, I love this gameplay for the sense of progression. I think it's really cool to be able to gauge where you are in the game based off of how much of this structure you've reassembled. And that part I think is really unique and interesting. I still have quite a few things to tweak in here. I don't know if I'm completely in love with the glow underneath the bricks. I put that in there to make it more legible where your brick will fall. It actually was quite difficult. I messed around with some different options. I mentioned I'm going to update some of the materials, and I also mentioned for your AI people placing bricks, I want to kind of have, I don't know, like a glow or something so you can indicate that there's another person doing this. But it's coming along, the visuals have improved quite a bit, and really just happy to see that the last mechanic is in place for the game. Okay, so while we let the bricks fall where they may, let's take a look at where we're at in the project. So this week obviously was brick gameplay. Like I mentioned, pretty happy with it right now, but there is still going to be a lot of polishing to come back to. And then next week here, I have the creating of a trailer. I think maybe this video, taking 2 weeks between this video and the last one, might have broken the weekly cycle. Doing weekly videos kept me really accountable and really kept me on track and making progress. But I think for the trailer, I'm probably going to need more than just a week, just because there's lots of things that we've gone through where I've kind of left things that still should be done, like having like sprite particles, or even now doing the materials on the ground, that kind of stuff. So I think probably the next video you'll see from me is going to be the game trailer, but I couldn't tell you when it's going to be. And that will be the end for devlog number 7. My last mechanic finally in the game. Our game loop is finally somewhat coming together. Coming up is going to be the game trailer, which is exciting. I think it's going to be the most polished video I've done yet. However, I don't know how long it'll take, so please be patient. In the meantime, though, I appreciate all of the views and all the support, and I'll catch you guys later. Bye.